white women. They set up bars and they went playing pool and golf for $1,000 a hole, and they were known to make millions and millions when there wasn't no high taxes, and they were not hindered by white America. They were allowed to see the white America is complete and close all the doors on me. I'm not allowed to work in America, out of America. I was stopped right in my prime just when I started making that. So you can't compare me with nobody like Joe Lewis or nobody.
And if you are black, if you are brown, if you are indigenous, and if you are poor, this system is rigged and it is rotten to the core, and we gonna unbreak it. That's it. And that's all.
That other kind of socialism that revolutionizes the workplace, brings democracy to the workplace for the first time.
So that's one way. And then the other thing is, in my more optimistic days, he's such a perfect endpoint of everything that is toxic and dysfunctional about the United States, about capitalism, about the 80s, that maybe this is the final sort of disgusting burst before we evolve or change to something better.
Talk about some things about why we need a new party. So I thought that'd be a good way to kind of do this. Why do we need a new party? We need a new party because both parties suck,
What are they talking about? Fortified. Are you fortified for the long run? Do you have your cemetery clothes on? Are you coffin ready to live and die for something bigger than you, like a fundamental transformation of a capitalist civilization?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Radical Democracy Show. I am your host, Kamali Rose, and I am getting some feedback on my mic right now, so I'm just going to correct that before I push forward with this. Give me 1 second. All right, I see where it's coming from. Trying to pull this up on Twitch, and okay. All right. Sorry about that, y'all. Just clearing that out. All right. Well, welcome to the show. It is Monday. Happy Monday, y'all. October 19th, 2020. And we got a lot to get to today. Some very exciting news and a couple of other stories that I wanted to make sure that we covered here because they are important, very important economic stories we wanted to discuss. So thank you to everyone for being here with us today. If you haven't done so already, I'm going to ask you to immediately hit that like button down below. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. You definitely want to do that. And please, massive favor to ask. This is the most important ask. Right now, our goal is to grow the channel. We need to grow the channel, faster and further. And so in order to do so, we need folks to share this stream out whatever social media you're on. Please hit that share button down below and share this out wherever, Twitter, Facebook, wherever you can, wherever there are some folks that might be interested. And even if you don't think so, please share this out. We need you to share it out. We want to grow the channel. We're on our road to 2,000 subscribers, where we've hit 1,150 subscribers over the past week, and we would like to just keep on growing. So we need your support to do so. Please help us out with that by sharing the stream out. All right, so let's get to the news. Thank you, as always, to our entire Patreon community. I just always want to make sure that that is constantly, we are sending our appreciation and gratitude for all that our Patreon community enable us to do. They keep the lights on around here, almost quite literally. And so please, if you can afford to do so, and only if you can afford to do so, do us a favor and sign up become a member of the show at patreon.com/radicaldemocracy. There are usually links in the description box. However, I happen to know I forgot to put a link in the description box. So Tammy, super producer Tammy, I don't know if you can add the link in just the link to the Patreon and the coffee. That would be deeply appreciated. I messed that up. Okay, so we'll get you links in the description box if we'll have that there soon. So, but please, patreon.com/radicaldemocracy, and you can also drop us a one-time tip at coffee.com/radicaldemocracy. That's ko-fi.com/radicaldemocracy. All right. Now that we have gotten through that, let's get to some news. All right. First story up. One sec. We'll have that there soon. So, but please, patreon.com/radicaldemocracy, and you can also drop us a one-time tip at coffee.com/radicaldemocracy. That's ko-fi.com/radicaldemocracy. All right. Now that we have gotten through that, let's get to some news. All right. Okay. So there was a massive election victory for the Socialists in Bolivia. The exit polls came in late last night, early this morning, and those results started to come in, and it was made clear very early on that, again, based on exit polling, that the Socialist Party in Bolivia has succeeded in this recent election. And this is a massive victory, not only for the Latin American left, but also just the left in general. And of course, for the Socialist Party in Bolivia, that had a coup against it just 1 year ago. Evo Morales won a democratic election, and unfortunately, there was a U.S. backed coup that ousted Evo Morales from power, and a right-wing unelected official with very low support from the public was able to step in and assume power. Janine Áñez, I believe. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing any names here. But So that was about a year ago now. This election was supposed to be held in May, but because of COVID-19, the election was postponed twice. It was first postponed to September 6th, and then finally it was postponed again as that date approached, and then finally it did take place on yesterday, October 18th. And so let's check out these results here. First, we'll take a look at this story in the Washington Post. All right. So this is a story in the Washington Post. Socialists claim massive victory in Bolivia 1 year after being ousted. So we're going to take a look at this story from the Washington Post just to get the numbers, and then we'll actually take a look at a more left-wing analysis of this election out of either The Intercept or Jacobin. And so this from the Washington Post article published again late last night, 11:55 last night. Exit polls issued early Monday showed Bolivia's socialists taking a seemingly insurmountable lead in the country's bitterly fought presidential election, a result that, if confirmed by the official tally, would amount to a massive popular rebuke of the right-wing forces that drove the left from power a year ago. Sunday's much-delayed election was a do-over of last year's contest. That vote ended with longtime socialist president Evo Morales fleeing into exile as opponents alleged electoral fraud and supporters decried a coup. Morales, banned from running this time, watched from Argentina as his former finance minister, front-runner Luis Arce, 57, faced two main competitors who sought to stop a socialist comeback. Centrist former President Carlos Mesa, 67, and right-wing nationalist Luis Camacho. The exit poll by the firm Sismori, with margin of error of less than 2 percentage points, indicated that Arce, the candidate of the Movement Towards Socialism, MAS party, had claimed 52.4% of the vote, compared to Mesa's 31.5% and Camacho's 14.1%. A second exit poll by a group of universities and Catholic institutions showed similar figures, giving Arce 53% and Mesa 30.8%. In a tweet, the right-wing U.S.-backed interim president, Janine Áñez Chávez, noted that the official tally was still being counted, but she nevertheless recognized Arce's apparent victory. This is a quote from the unelected right-wing nationalist former interim president who took power via coup, U.S.-backed coup. This is a quote from her. She says, "We do not yet have an official count, but from the data we have, Mr. Arce and his vice presidential candidate, Mr. David Choquehuanca, have won the election. I congratulate the winners and ask them to govern with Bolivia and democracy in mind." Sorry, because I know I just destroyed that name. I apologize. Deeply apologize. If the exit poll numbers are confirmed by the official count, which was being tabulated slowly late Sunday, it would be more than enough to avoid a November runoff and claim outright victory. So that's a picture of Luis Arce here. "We have recovered democracy," Arce said in a public speech early Monday. "We promise to respond to our pledge to work and bring our program to fruition. We are going to govern for all Bolivians and construct a government of national unity." Experts caution that the exit polls are not the same as the official count, of which less than 5% was tallied by midnight, but they offered what many observers called a fairly precise snapshot of a huge wave of support for the socialists who had ruled the country since 2006 before being forced out last year following claims of fraud. All right, let's take it over to a left-wing outlet just so that we can see just a better analysis and some more have some more information provided around the the actual events of the coup. So one sec, we're going to pull up an article from Jacobin magazine, great left-wing magazine here. So give me one sec. All right, so we're going to take a look at this Jacobin article about this election, and we will this will just provide a little bit more information as to around the coup and the events of last year as well, and the significance of this election. So, all right. November 10th. Okay, this is from the Jacobin magazine, and this is in an article from today titled "Evo Morales' Party's Massive Victory is a Rebuke to U.S. Elites Who Have Hailed the Coup." It's by Sean Goudet. And it starts out, it says, immediately after last year's right-wing coup in Bolivia, U.S. elites, including many liberals, celebrated or excused the putsch against Evo Morales. A putsch, by the way, is a violent coup. So they celebrated or excused the putsch against Evo Morales. Yesterday's resounding electoral win for Morales' party is a rebuke to all of their bloviating nonsense and a massive triumph for democracy in Bolivia. This is a picture of some of the Bolivians celebrating after. And I'm sorry, before the election was held. So, all right. Continuing on from this article, November 10th, 2019 was a day of celebration in the citadels of U.S. punditry and elite policymaking. Evo Morales was gone. The populist dragon had been slain. No longer would the pink tide stalk their imaginations. The U.S. right, veterans of defining democracy as its opposite, hailed the coup against Morales as a popular victory. According to the Wall Street Journal, the putsch represented a, quote, democratic breakout in Bolivia, end quote. Check that out, a democratic breakout in Bolivia. They're talking about a coup that happened after against a president who had just been elected overwhelmingly in a democratic election, and that was Evo Morales, who was then, and this is an indigenous, president of Bolivia, and he was ousted. He had a coup against him, and they call that a democratic breakout in Bolivia. The Wall Street Journal. The Trump administration, continuing on from this article, the Trump administration praised the military for quote, abiding by its oath to protect not just a single person, but Bolivia's constitution. So he's talking about a military coup here, and they're talking about protecting the Constitution. That was absolutely unconstitutional and anti-democratic. And you have the president of the United States praising that. And you can see here, whenever it's something against socialism, you got the right and the liberals working in tandem. The so-called centrists are in tandem, working in tandem with the right-wing neo-fascists and the neoliberals are able to join together on issues like this whenever it comes to stomping out the left and squashing popular left uprisings. So continuing on, so the Trump administration confidently predicted that, quote, we are now one step closer to a completely democratic, prosperous, and free Western Hemisphere. So, they're claiming that this takes us a step closer to a democratic Western Hemisphere. Somehow, military coups may bring us steps closer to democracy somehow. Military coups that overthrow democratic elected leaders are somehow, make us more democratic. One of the most jubilant in the cheering crowd was Yasha Monk, a stenographer of the Liberal Center, doyen of populist studies. Evo Morales' resignation is not a coup, Monk said in a Twitter missive on November 11th. So look, Evo Morales' resignation is not a coup. Monk said in a Twitter missive on November 11th, "It is one of the few big victories democracy has won in recent years." He expanded on that bold claim in an Atlantic article the same day. Like many populists on both the left and the right, Morales claimed to wield, so this is a quote from that Atlantic article. Like many populists on both the left and the right, Morales claimed to wield power in the name of the people. But after weeks of mass protests in La Paz and other Bolivian cities, and the rapid crumbling of his support both within law enforcement and his own political party, it was his loss of legitimacy among the majority of his own countrymen that forced Morales to resign yesterday. No, I would say it was the U.S. backed military coup that forced him to resign. He would have gladly taken office and continued to lead the people of Bolivia. Nowhere did Monk mention the millions pulled out of extreme poverty. So this is speaking to the achievements of Evo Morales and the socialist government in Bolivia. Nowhere did Monk mention the millions pulled out of extreme poverty, the raft of public services initiated, or perhaps most impressively, the incorporation of indigenous people, for centuries scorned and hated by the ruling elite, into Bolivian politics as equal members. These apparently were incidental to the health of the country's democracy. Morales, you see, was just like the right-winger Jair Bolsonaro, himself the beneficiary of a coup carried out against a pink tide party that, in Monk's mind, was probably also a populist excrescence. So, continuing on, nor did a couple weeks' hindsight cause Monk to change his tune. In a November 26th article, Monk argued that Morales was trying to, quote, incite civil war, end quote, denounced right and left populists as different varieties of the same anti-democratic beast, now somehow conflating left and right-wing populists. Some argue that right-wing populism is essentially fascism, left-wing populism is socialism, is taking care of the masses of people, and through in an expansion of democracy. So the latest developments in so he denounced the right and left populists as different varieties of the same anti-democratic beast and insisted that Morales' removal was a boon for democracy. The latest developments in La Paz should, whatever their result, inspire fear in the hearts of the world's populist dictators. So that's just a quote from Monk there, Sasha Monk. So elsewhere in the precincts of elite centrist and center-left opinion, hand-wringing and both sides apologetics prevailed. The Washington Post editorial board acknowledged Morales' successes while blaming him for the, quote, anarchy that had engulfed the country. And the New York Times editorial board, while declining to celebrate the coup, nevertheless solemnly concluded that Morales had to be deposed. Again, just continue to remember, this is a democratically elected, popularly elected president who they're talking about. Imagine if Joe Biden wins this upcoming election and then, the military all of a sudden rises up and Joe Biden resigns, the day that he's elected. You tell me that would look like a democratic action. This is a quote, I believe, from that New York Times editorial board. The forced ouster of an elected leader is by definition a setback to democracy and so a moment of risk. But when a leader resorts to brazenly abusing the power and institutions put in his care by the electorate, as President Evo Morales did in Bolivia, it is he who sheds his legitimacy, and forcing him out often becomes the only remaining option. So abusing the power and institutions put in their care is apparently enough for, according to them. And again, what are they even talking about him abusing the power and institutions put in his care? Look, he uplifted millions out of poverty. He incorporated indigenous people into the political realm like never before in this country. And apparently those things are a abuse of power in the institutions. That's somehow is, All of this is worth remembering in light of what happened yesterday. Luis Arce, the presidential candidate for Morales' MAS party, won 52% of the vote, according to preliminary results, beating his opponent so handily that Janine Áñez, the leader of the right-wing coup government, was forced to concede defeat. All right, so I'm just going to continue on from this article because it's just so good, and I think there's so much important information here. MAS's crushing victory, if I can borrow a phrase from Monk, is, quote, one of the few big victories democracy has won in recent years, end quote. Over the past year, Áñez's government has persecuted MAS supporters and repeatedly pushed back elections. The U.S.-dominated Organization of American States doggedly circulated the lie that Morales had engaged in election fraud. The Bolivian far right, an amalgamation of anti-indigenous racist and pro-business potentates, was given time to regroup and wrest back power. They all failed. Bolivian workers and indigenous people braved the repression and restored democracy to the country. Sunday's election is a rebuke to the coup makers and right-wingers, to the Washington establishment and Western opponents of leftist governments, to the pundits and thinkers who equate democracy with liberal capitalism and excoriate deviations from that orthodoxy as populist hysteria. All right. And he finishes off by saying, and as for Yasha Monk, we'll have to wait with bated breath for his opinion. His pen and his Twitter account have gone conspicuously silent. All right. So yeah, so this was a massive win here. As long as the victory is by more than 10%, as long as the results show a larger than a 10% lead for any party, that party they're not required to go to a November runoff election, where the two top vote getters would have then faced a runoff if it is within 10%. So the results are showing right now. It looks like based on exit polls, the Socialist Party is somewhere around 53%. The centrist party is somewhere around 31% or 32%. And so this would be, around a 20-point victory according to the exit polls, which would eliminate the need for any runoff. And that would be an overwhelming victory for the Socialist Party in Bolivia. And so I think that's great news. And I was very happy to wake up to that news this morning. This is we saw in real time in front of our eyes, we saw a US-backed coup take place. That is, folks like Elon Musk were out there. We did a video. You can check out our video on Elon Musk and the Bolivian coup. And so, feel free to check out our past coverage of it. We definitely covered that. Folks like Elon Musk love, they were loving it because in Bolivia I believe it's the world's largest lithium reserves are in Bolivia. And so the Tesla batteries, Tesla owned by, in large part by Elon Musk, they use lithium. They need lithium batteries to power their cars. And so this was a coup that was encouraged by US, the so-called liberal, Silicon Valley liberal tech elites, and combined with this is where they find themselves in lockstep with the Trump right and neo-fascists that are whose goals are anti-socialist, and which is this anti-populist rhetoric. They like to equate right-wing and left-wing populism, which is absurd. Here on the right-wing populism, according to now some people like a Sagar and Jetty would argue and would say right-wing populism, that's what he believes in, and it's a somehow I'm not going to do any disservice to try to explain their position. You can see Sagar and Jetty's breadth of work and get a feel for where he stands. He's sort of some economic populism in there, and sometimes that will overlap with the left and the so-called populist right on certain issues, certain they're supposedly populist. The idea of populist is supposed to mean that it's popular. They're the positions that are popular amongst the people and have majority support. But if that's true, then they would support things like Medicare for all, Green New Deal, $15 minimum wage. So those sorts of things are popular issues, and if you poll on them, they have majority support in this country. So, but left-wing populism is like expansion of democracy, essentially, and like expanding social services. Sort of social democracy is a heavily regulated capitalism, I would say. In this country, that's the form that it takes. And that would be the left-wing populist sort of position. Medicare for all, Green New Deal, Fight for 15, legalizing cannabis. These are populist positions, left-wing populist positions. So yeah, this was I was really excited to see this. I'm always happy whenever the CIA and Elon Musk are unhappy. That makes me happy. And so this was one that I know our CIA, they don't want to see a socialist in power. This is going to, I saw Tesla stock. I mean, I looked at Tesla stock. It's down, but I don't know if this is a direct correlation or anything like that. It's been dipping for about the last week, but you know what? It's been known for about the last week that the Socialist Party was very likely to win these elections. And so it wouldn't surprise me if that factored in some ways to that affecting Tesla stock, because they heavily rely on that, and they would under a US capitalist friendly government, like those far right wing nationalists, and just notice who big tech liberal elites like Elon Musk, who they're happy to join forces with, are far right wing nationalists. They're celebrating. Here you had liberals and right-wing neo-fascists all celebrating the undemocratic, anti-democratic military violent military coup against a democratically elected president, indigenous president, who had lifted millions out of poverty, and the lifespan increased under him. A crazy statistic that I heard was that, like, because their nutrition improved apparently, like the average height in Bolivia increased under Evo Morales, because people were somehow, through the nutrition programs that he was offering, people were getting, where children weren't going hungry. They were able to develop better. And like the average height of the population increased, like significantly increased under Evo Morales, enough that it gets talked about. So these are the kinds of advancements that his government was making. It's the movement towards socialism. They understand that it's not socialist, not my form of socialist, democratic socialist, but it is a heavily, it is, a true social democracy. At worst, it's a social democracy, and their goal is to move the movement towards socialism, so that they hope to bring the country further and further in a socialist direction. And so I am fully supportive of that. It's not some authoritarian socialism. They're holding democratic elections. These are democratically elected. Evo Morales was the democratically elected president, and he is the rightful president of Bolivia. He should be the president of Bolivia right now, but he was not even allowed to run in this election. And so, that's unfortunate. That's anti-democratic. And he was run out of his own country as a democratically elected official with the help of, the US and our intelligence agencies. So I'm, I, for one, happy for the Bolivian people. I saw videos of them celebrating in the streets, and it's just a beautiful thing to see. I love it to see the people win and a real victory for the people here. So beautiful stuff. Really happy for everyone in Bolivia. And, I know that this will move the people forward, and this is a great outcome. I honestly, we were talking in our Discord server, the Radical Democracy Discord server. If you want access, you just got to sign up, as a $5 patron or more on patreon.com/radical democracy, and you'll get an invitation to our Discord server. So we were chatting in the Discord server earlier, and Brian from our Patreon community was talking about how, he hadn't been this happy about an election since Bernie won Nevada. And I agree. I haven't felt this good about an election. I didn't think that we were going to have an election to be this excited about in 2020, to be honest. I know for some people watching this right now, Donald Trump losing will be, a great thing for you. And I'm happy that it will make you happy. Honestly, I'm happy for anything that makes people happy. But unfortunately, I don't believe that it will have the impact on working class and poor people that will make me as a socialist happy. Unfortunately, I have nothing to be happy about for a neoliberal to take power. The same person that was in power before Trump last time just doesn't excite me, unfortunately. So that's that. And just wanted to make sure I covered that and gave a, send my love and positive thoughts towards the Bolivian people. Shin says socialism has prevailed in Bolivia. Absolutely. That is awesome. I look forward to the day that a socialist party can take power in America. If that day, I hope I live to see that day. I truly do. I truly hope that I live to see that day. And so I would love it. I would love it. But yes, this is a massive victory for socialism, massive victory for the Latin American left, and a massive blow to the, U.S. intelligence, and U.S. imperialism. And so I am in full support of anything that deals a blow to U.S. imperialism. So happy to see that. Connie V says Saga worries me. LOL. Yeah, I can, I like Sagar as far as right-wing folks go. Sagar's a person that I can stand, at least, and I believe that he's sincere in his positions. He believes what he says he believes, and that he is he thinks he's doing his honest best. And it's not he's not a grifter. I don't think that there's malice in him or anything like that. I just think that I vehemently disagree with him on. We agree. Most right-wing populists will agree about what the problems are, but we totally disagree about what the solution should be. So with Sagar, that's my concern with Sagar, and something that I still do. I'll tell you, The Hill is one of the, it's the closest thing to mainstream media that I watch, and I do watch it quote unquote, religiously, essentially. I watch it every day. I watch The Hill. It's one of the places that I draw my news from, because I like the perspective that Crystal Ball and Sagar and Jetty have to offer. We don't always agree on a lot of stuff, you see me call some of it out on this show before, but I do respect, them as journalists and value their opinions, at least. And I don't think that we should just go into a bubble where we don't listen to anyone that disagrees with us. And so I saw a debate between Sagar and Jetty and Michael Brooks. I thought that debate I think it was on the issue of China specifically. Maybe it was trade in general, but there's a great debate between Sagar and Jetty and Michael Brooks. And I think that, Michael Brooks talked about it after the debate. And he was like, I enjoyed, he enjoyed that. He felt like it was an honest debate. They were real, it could have helped move some people or help develop some people's opinions on these issues further. And so I think there's value in that. And he's not like Ben Shapiro and Steven Crowder and Jordan Peterson. So we gotta, try to talk to some people on the right, because you know what, there is some coalitions to build there. I was watching, actually, Tim Black was talking on a show recently about just coalition building with folks that maybe consider themselves conservative. Maybe they watch mainstream media, and they're doing what we were doing with MSNBC. They just haven't caught up to the fact that they're being, lied to and through their mainstream media outlets. And so, but we were there. I was there with MSNBC just like 5 years ago. I thought that MSNBC and CNN was like straight up news, and that you should just believe whatever you hear there. And that's like the range of debate and the range of ideas. And I thought I was getting a good representation of that, only to find out that no, I was not. So yeah. What Up America says, Connie V, no doubt Saagar has a lot of dark opinions that he doesn't voice that often. Yeah, like we totally disagree about policing, the issue of policing. Connie V says, yeah, like he claims to be a populist, but he's also against most populist policies. I don't like, that's the thing. That's what, see, and I said that like, that's what, like left-wing populist policies he's against. I suppose he's in favor of what they call right-wing populism, but then we really got to start to break down what that even means, because I guess things that are popular amongst people on the right, I suppose that would be what right-wing populism should be. But you would think that it would be things that are popular amongst the entire country that then happen to also be right-wing issues. Like that's how I define populism for left-wing populism, is like things that are popular amongst the entire country, not just if it's just popular amongst people on the left or Democrats. Like it needs to be popular amongst, at large, majority support in the country. And so the left, I believe that Saagar, again, his analysis, I'm not an expert on populism. I hope to read Thomas Frank's book on populism, and so that I can get a better grasp of this. It has a historical definition to it. I've watched a great interview with him on Jacobin talk with him. And so all I know is that I have a lot more to learn about populism specifically. But all I know is that he's a genuine right-winger who agrees with us on some of the analysis of what's wrong, but not, we agree what the problem is. We don't agree with what the solution is with Saagar. And, there's some interesting debate that can come out of that, I think. And we can also see where there is some coalition building that might be able to happen, like getting money out of politics. Saagar has a populist opinion on that. So let me just correct you on that one thing that I can speak to for sure, Connie, which is that Saagar does have a populist opinion on getting money out of politics. He wholeheartedly believes that we should have no private money in politics, that there's too much money in politics, and that we need to fix the laws that allowed that. So he does have a populist, and those are the sorts of things that, and you'll see like the Wolff, TYT's Wolff Pack, that Cenk Uygur started a movement called the Wolff Pack, which they fight to try to get money out of politics. And they oftentimes are able to do so by getting bipartisan support. This is something that both right-wing and left-wing people believe in. And so it's only the centrists that want all the money in politics. So we need to learn, and we'll have to use coalition building to work to actually overcome issues like that. We're not going to be able to do it without building coalition on the right as well. So we can't just be like, oh, we're only going to get people on the left, and that's it. And that's how we're going to move any kind of policy forward. If we're talking about policy building, it has to happen. Some of it is going to have to happen with, coalition building with people that are, libertarian or conservative on certain issues, social issues, maybe, but maybe we agree economically. What Up America says, you might check out what quote, Progressive Voice has on Saagar. It's pretty damning. Yeah, I'll check out Progressive Voice. I love Progressive Voice. Good dude. I won't call him a kid, even though I've been watching him for a while, and I swear I've watched him since he was a kid. So I feel like I've seen him like grow up in front of my eyes. I feel like that's my little brother there, that he don't know me, obviously, but but yeah, I've just like watched anywho, Progressive Voice, good voice on the left. And I think I shouted him out in my welcome video. I'll check it out and see what he has to say about Sagar. I'll try to check it out because he does good work on watching folks that are he's a good media critic for progressive media or like independent media. He's a good independent media critic, progressive voice. And I'd like to do some more of that. And that's why I try to do stories criticizing like Crystal and Sagar and such. Connie V says, do they say he has some fascist tendencies? Because I think he definitely has some fascist tendencies. Yeah, like on his position on policing, it's like that shit is definitely like neo-fascist tendency of like, he loves to use the word crack down. He's like, we need to send the police in there to crack down on these protesters. And I'm like, no, that is not what we need. That is authoritarian. That is fascist. Like, at least, and we sometimes like this like debate on fascism. I'm not yet ready to have it out. But at least I was watching recently. So let me just clarify. I was watching recently a discussion between Professor Harvey J.K. and Michael Brooks, where they talked about whether, and David Griscom was on there, and I think Matt Leck was discussing as well, and they were talking about whether or not it's a wise decision to use the term fascist to describe like Trump and people, some folks on the right today. Is it a useful term? And Professor Harvey K., his position was that it's too inflammatory and it sometimes gets in the way of any sort of meaningful debate happening. As soon as you accuse somebody of being fascist, they can sort of claim that you're being so that you're exaggerating or being over the top, and the conversation can sort of devolve from there. So the term that he recommended using was reactionary, and reactionary had a sort of a gut, like a feeling to it. It had some real punch to it. But Michael Brooks and others were arguing that maybe the word reactionary nowadays just doesn't have the same sort of oomph to it. And that's why the term fascist is, and there are the fascism, I don't know, defined by economists is like Richard Wolff. He says it's anytime, you have the private capitalism working in concert with the state in a nationalist way. And I think that, it can be argued that Trump is a fascist, if that's the definition that we're going to go by. It can be argued that certain things that, under Obama did was fascist, that George Bush did was fascist. And so, but Sagar, when he talks about cracking down on protesters and stuff like that, like no doubt about it, that is what I would consider neo-fascist at best. And straight up authoritarian. At the very least, it's authoritarian. It's reactionary. And I disagree with it. Connie V says fascism has a kind of fluid definition, which does make it hard to know exactly when to apply it properly. Yeah, just like capitalism and socialism, like there's not one kind of fascism. There's not one kind of capitalism, not one kind of socialism. The fascism that was in Italy was different than the fascism that was in Germany. And it was different than the fascism that was in Japan. So, but they were all fascist, but it took different forms. And so in that same way, it's very hard. It's sort of it's a fluid thing. It's hard to pin down, but I don't think it's wrong to say, certain positions that they take are neo-fascist positions. And I think that crackdown on protesters line that Sagar was running with during the George Floyd protests and beyond, he's just so quick and easy to like drop support for BLM, to be like, oh no, they threw a chair through a window, they threw a brick through a window. I don't support that anymore. They're committing property violence, as if that's a damn thing. Like don't talk to me about property violence. Like you can't be violent to property, as far as I'm concerned. You can be violent to living beings. That's it. Living things is what you can be violent towards. What Up America says, and that includes the planet, by the way. And other living creatures. What Up America says he's on board with people like Tucker Carlson and used to work at the Blaze or something. Yeah, he got his like big start through working for Tucker Carlson's daily, what is it called? Daily Caller. Daily Caller. So Sagar used to work for Tucker Carlson. He literally worked with Tucker Carlson. And I am no fan of Tucker Carlson. I can't stand the dude. I think he's terrible, awful, horrendous. every once in a while have a take that you know, it overlaps with a left take, but then again, it'll be that right-wing populist version where they'll agree with the problem, but we totally disagree about the solution. They're like, yes, you know, these businesses are sending jobs, you know, over in our what the hell is that word? But outsourcing, you know, they're outsourcing jobs, and you know, and we'll be like, oh yeah, we need to, you know, ensure that there are like fair trade policies where we say, you know, these companies, if they try to get a worker from another country, then they have to pay them the same amount that they would pay their US worker. That deters them from trying to go get cheap labor. But if there's a foreign person that it happens to be they need to work, you can have them work there, but you're not going to do so at the detriment of a U.S. worker. But they will instead, their solution will be like, yeah, so we need to ban all immigrants from coming here, and we need to make sure, you know, it's like, and do like tariffs on goods that come back into the country, and they'll have all the right wing sort of reactionary responses to those issues. So. Connie V says, it seems like most definitions I look at still apply to both the GOP and Dems, though, which is kind of scary. Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. Like, it seems like I would argue that those definitions would apply to, and I've seen people argue from the left that they do fit that description of sort of fascist positions that have been taken under both Democratic and Republican administrations. So, all right. Let's cruise along to our next story here. Please, if you haven't done so already, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this out far and wide. We got to grow this channel. We're working hard to do so. So, you know, any support that we can get, we definitely need to make this thing grow. And so, you know, we got a big, you know, with this election coming up, I don't know if anyone can believe this right now, but we are 15 days away from the presidential election right now. Like, I don't know if that's sunk in for people yet, but like, I can't wait for this damn thing to be over. But I know that on the day of, that is going to be a massive day for, you know, I will be doing I'm going to do a big stream that day. I'm expecting a lot of activity on the stream that day. And so we plan to gear up, and we want to grow the channel as big as we can up before then. Shows this week might be a little bit more sparse. I might not be able to do 4 straight shows Monday through Thursday like I've been doing the past couple of weeks. But I will try to do, you know, we will get at least 2 shows out this week, but we got to do some prep work for that election show. And that means like I need to do announcements and such like that. And so, and like, update our Patreon and coffee and all kinds of stuff. And so a lot of like behind the scenes stuff that has to happen. So just a heads up, might be not as many streams this week. Also, just got to catch up on video editing and getting those clips out, so that, because I think that the clips are, you know, people not everyone can watch these live streams, and they're only able to watch shorter clips. And so one thing I'm trying to do is just try to make these live streams shorter. And in order to do so, I'll try to be better about taking comments more towards the end. We'll kind of have more of an open session at the end of the show, so that I can get the actual content of the show condensed down, so that if people jump on, they don't like, sometimes people are in here and they're waiting for the real show to start, and they don't want to watch like me, you know, doing the behind the scenes stuff and that sort of stuff. So people pop in and just pop back out. So I want to make sure I get a good show going fast and you know, get right to it. All right. Next story up is, all right. One sec while we pull this next story up. So for our next story, oh, and by the way, please follow us on Twitch. You see it right there below. Please follow us on Twitch. We need to grow to over 50 followers on Twitch. That's our goal, our Twitch goal. And so please help us do so. If you have a Twitch account, or even if you don't, go get one, sign up. We need our community to support us in that way. Whoever doesn't mind, when you got some free time, please do us a favor, create a Twitch account, follow us on Twitch so that we can, start to grow our Twitch base. And in order to do so, we just got to cross a couple of thresholds so that we can, get full access to the platform. So help us with that. Sign up on Twitch. All right. So for this next story, it is just a quick story about COVID that I came across and wanted to, I'm going to do that one after. Tammy, just so you know. You got me? Okay, yeah. So this next story up is just a quick story that I want to do on COVID, and particularly just pointing out that something that I don't think is getting covered enough, which is I just want to make sure that we cover here, which is just some of the long-term effects of COVID have been showing up, and there's been recent studies on them, and just wanted to make sure that we draw attention to that because it is a serious issue, and want to make sure that our community stays informed on these issues. So let's go to this story from The Guardian on the long-term effects of COVID-19 and what we know so far. Okay, so this is a story out of The Guardian. Long COVID, what we know so far. Lasting symptoms may not be down to a single syndrome, but several different ones. All right. This is from Linda Geddes, and it was published October 15th. At the start of the pandemic, we were told that COVID-19 was a respiratory illness from which most people would recover within 2 to 3 weeks. But it's increasingly clear that there may be tens of thousands of people, if not hundreds of thousands, who have been left experiencing symptoms months after becoming infected. Now, the National Institute for Health Research has released a report which suggests that, quote, long COVID may not be a single syndrome, but up to 4 different ones, which some patients might be experiencing simultaneously. Here's what we know. So they go on to talk about what the different types of long-term effects of COVID are. And again, some people are experiencing not just one of these long-term effects, but some or all of these. So the first one they talk about is recovering from ICU. Hospital discharge is often only the start of a lengthy recovery process. Many COVID-19 patients who have survived a period in intensive care are too weak to sit unaided or lift their arms off the bed, and some may even struggle to speak or swallow. This may also be affected by depression or post-traumatic stress disorder. However, severe lasting symptoms were not restricted to this group. So they're saying it's not only people that have issues recovering from the ICU that have severe lasting symptoms. Another long-term effect is post-viral fatigue. Many COVID, quote, long haulers report fatigue, aching muscles, and difficulty concentrating. The extent to which this overlaps with chronic fatigue syndrome is being investigated. So people are having, feeling fatigued, aching muscles, difficulty concentrating long after they recover from COVID-19. Lasting organ damage, ongoing breathlessness, coughs, or a racing pulse could be symptoms of lasting damage to the lungs or heart, although this isn't necessarily permanent. Lung damage seems particularly prevalent among patients who required hospital treatment for COVID-19. A recent study found that 6 weeks after leaving hospital, around half of patients were still experiencing breathlessness, dropping to 39% at 12 weeks. So 40% of people that who required hospital treatment, even 12 weeks out, they were still experiencing breathlessness. That's almost 3 months out. So that's pretty intense. Meanwhile, approximately a third of hospitalized patients sustain heart damage, but those with seemingly mild infections can also be affected. So even people with seemingly mild infections of COVID can end up with long-term heart damage. A separate study of 100 patients, many of whom had relatively mild symptoms when they were infected in March, revealed that 78 of them showed abnormal structural changes to their hearts on an MRI scan. These changes didn't necessarily cause symptoms and may dissipate with time, however. Ongoing problems with their liver and skin have also been reported. There's also symptoms that fluctuate and move around the body. Perhaps the weirdest group of COVID long haulers are those with fluctuating symptoms. A common theme is that symptoms arise in one physiological system, then abate, only for symptoms to arise in a different system, the NIHR report said. This fits with the results of a survey of long COVID support group members, which found that 70% experienced fluctuations in the type of symptoms and 89% in the intensity of their symptoms. Although the underlying mechanism remains unproven, such symptoms might fit with a disrupted immune system, Altman said. So they're saying this may indicate that people's immune systems are being impacted long term by one, having a single case of COVID. It's also important to note here that all ages are affected by this. Estimates have suggested that 10% of COVID patients experience Estimates have suggested that 10% of COVID patients experience symptoms lasting longer than 3 weeks, and around 1 in 50 will still be ill at 3 months. The NIHR report said lasting symptoms had been observed in all age groups, including children, but unpublished results from the COVID symptom study suggest that women and older people may be at greater risk. Above the age of 18, the risk of symptoms lasting for longer than a month seemed to generally increase with age, said Professor Tim Spector, a professor of genetic epidemiology at King's College in London, who runs the study. All right. So, yeah, this is, I just feel that this is important given that we live in America. I'm in America, and here in the US, we have some of the worst rates of COVID. We have 4% of the world's population, but we have 24% of the world's COVID cases and deaths. And so it's over 215,000 deaths in this country since the start of this pandemic. Just to put that in contrast, by the way, China, which has 4 times the population, and I can already hear some liberals and some right-wing people right now saying, oh, but China, they're authoritarian communists and they're not reporting the right numbers. No, they have no, the US also isn't reporting the right numbers because we don't have proper testing in place. Not everybody that ends up sick gets tested in this country. We've still only tested a small percentage of the country. Like 10% of people have received a COVID test so far. So it's still a tiny fraction of our population that have even been tested. So people don't know if they have COVID or if they've ever had COVID still to this day. So our numbers are being underreported. So for other reasons. So let's not ignore that. Also, it's the Trump administration. I don't know why we're just believing everything that comes out of that administration either. So, that I don't give me that. So China, over the same amount of time, do you want to know how many people have died from COVID in China over the course of this pandemic? Remember, keeping in mind, 215,000 people have died in the US, and China has 4 times the population as the US. How many people do you think died in China? At the rate of the US, if the same amount of people died, per capita in China as in the US, that would amount to 860,000 deaths. Okay, if they were to be, equivalent to the US death rate for COVID-19, it would require 860,000 people. It's actually like 865,000 people because it's over 216,000 right now, people that have died. It would be over 864,000 people dying in China. You want to know their actual number? Anyone? 5,000. 5,000 people have died in China from COVID-19 over the same amount of time as the US. 5,000 people. And they just had this big celebration in China. It's called, I think Golden Week is what they call it. And it's to celebrate the, I forget what year it was. Is it 1939, 1949? 1949 is when the communists came into power in China, I believe it was like 1949 maybe, and they're celebrating the anniversary of this, the rise to power of the communist, party in China. And it's a massive celebration where like apparently like I don't know what the number they said, like 50 million. Is the number like 50 million or freaking, it might have been 500 million people are expected to travel during this holiday. I think the number might be 500 million people are expected to travel during this holiday, meet with their families, travel. Do you think that could still go on in America right now, and events like that happening right now? No, we're still facing we're having spikes in our coronavirus cases. Things had gotten a little bit better, through the summer, and schools open back up, and it's just swinging right back up. And we've had over 60,000 cases reported in a single day for the first time since back in July, recently. And the number keeps going up, and it keeps on going further. Like it was like the highest number since August, a few weeks ago. And now it's the highest number since July. And we're just ticking back up to our old highs already. And so this is, it's stark. What's the difference between how the U.S. has handled coronavirus and how China handled coronavirus. And so, Donald Trump can walk around calling it the China virus, all he wants to. But you know what? The Chinese government and, the Chinese people have been able to keep it under control, and they were able to to do it in a way that, I mean, their economy, they had, I think the number was 4.9% economic growth over the last quarter. Like the US economy contracted by 35% over the last quarter. So during the time that the US economy contracted 35%, the China grew 5%. At the time that we contracted, we went down 35%. China went up 5%. Okay. That's the difference between how you handle. If you actually, because they have, they're much more universal about the mask wearing there, which enables them to, the better contact tracing. And the government, did better taking care of people so that they could actually hold up and stay home and not be destitute doing so. So they're not desperate to get back into the economy just to earn a check, which so many people here are. They're being forced into that situation because the government, our Congress, not just Donald Trump, but Nancy Pelosi rejected the recent stimulus offer that would have given at least $400 a week extra to unemployed workers. We're going to talk about unemployment shortly. And so this was just one that wanted to make sure I drew some attention to. Keep in mind the long-term effects of COVID-19, because it's not like, this isn't something that we should play games with. It's not just the time that you're sick. Some people talk about experiencing mild symptoms, and a lot of young people, I have to admit, like people in my generation, yeah, I call myself young. I did that. Young folks, I'm an elder millennial. But like folks my age, younger, have for a while were playing a little fast and loose with it. I know some people, it's not all across the board, but there were a lot of young people that were saying, because the reports were out saying, this doesn't impact younger people the same way that it does. The death rate is much higher in older demographics. Then young people were just like acting like they couldn't also be spreaders of the disease, and were like going and partying and stuff like that. And so I think that young folks also have to recognize, like, it's long-term, and it can also hurt people, that even if you get mild symptoms, and it's affecting people of all ages, not just, particularly people over 18 years old, more so, but people of all ages, and it's disproportionately harming women. So these are, and of course we know one of the major stories behind COVID is that it has been disproportionately killing black people in this country. So, and this is what is going to happen anytime you have, because of the way that race and gender are so, as a recent quote from Professor Robin D.G. Kelly, is that race and gender are the modalities under which capitalism exists. And so, those are the way, race and gender are the modes under which class exists. And so, whenever there are classist policies, they will be disproportionately harming women and black, brown people, indigenous people in this country. All right. So just want to make sure, warning, take care of yourselves, folks. Like, please take care of yourself. Wear a mask when you go out in public. Don't gather in large crowds if you can avoid doing so. All that goes, it can only be said, it can only be done if you got enough money to put food on the table and all that sort of stuff. So if you can take care of yourself, please stay safe. Just be careful, wear a mask. There was a young dude from Brockton, this is like surrounding, towns near me. They were just in a few towns over from me. A young guy, in his 30s, died from COVID. So it can happen to anyone, young, old. We got to be careful. And also, even if it doesn't hurt you, you might spread it to somebody who it then hurts. And so it's on us. It's part of our duty to our community to protect others in our community. And that means wearing a mask, washing your hands, if you can do so now, of course, and staying inside when you can. That's easy to do if you have a home. If you're already homeless, how do you shelter inside, wear masks and wash your hands when you don't have access to those things? So that's a massive issue, and I'm not ignorant to that, and I'm aware of that. And so if you can, please be safe, take care of yourself, folks. Like, I don't want anyone watching this to get sick or be harmed by this. And just know that it's not just the short-term effects, it has long-term effects. And it's just yet another reason why. One thing I want to say here is that even if Joe Biden wins this upcoming election, so many people that have been harmed by COVID will not be taken care of properly by our society. I just read something about a $52,000 helicopter ride. A patient was charged $52,000 for getting an emergency helicopter ride because they had COVID-19. And they got a surprise. It's just like this new thing that people are not a new thing. Sorry. This is like a thing that's been happening for a long time, not a new thing. But it's still happening under COVID, even though they tried to pass something that would have stopped this at the beginning of the pandemic. They failed to get that through Congress. And so there's no protection against hospitals doing these surprise bills to patients. And all of a sudden you are faced with a $52,000 bill. Contrast that with Donald Trump, who just caught COVID and was taking a helicopter ride. You think that Donald Trump came out of pocket $52,000? No, the taxpayers covered that. So it's just, just emphasizes why, and just highlights why we need a Medicare for all system and why that's the only just system. And Joe Biden doesn't support that. Even with all of this going on, Joe Biden is still hostile towards Medicare for all, which to me is just, it's inhumane. I don't even know. It's violent in and of itself to say some of you are going to have to die without health insurance or be thrown into bankruptcy and destitution because of your healthcare bills. So that's the difference, but Joe Biden will be taken care of by the taxpayers. If he gets sick while he's president or while he's, a senator here, he's, when he was vice president, he gets taken care of by the taxpayers. The rest of us, we can go screw. So, good luck to the rest of us, apparently. Connie V says, I can't even imagine how much our mismanagement is affecting the entire world. Yeah, absolutely. Like, not just like health wise, but also like obviously environmentally, and then also economically. Like, the economic impact that this has is going to reverberate around the world because of the way that of the global economy and the fact that all these countries are interlinked and intertwined our economies. So when one falls, the rest, topple shortly thereafter. And so I think that this is going to have massive economic toll, not just in the US, but around the world because of that. And you'll see that something that's happening right now, Richard Wolff covered this in his recent economic update, is that like in Denmark, they just did a deal with Russia about, for natural gas, I think, or oil production, some form of energy production. People are moving away. Brazil is doing business. Former partners of ours, because of our trade wars, are now doing business with Russia, China, and China is doing business with other countries instead of doing business with the US. China is doing business with like Brazil and Germany and Russia and other countries because the US has done these like nationalist trade wars. What do you call it? Protectionist trade wars that just push our allies away and create the situation where we're, we lose our trade partners essentially. So, it's affecting us in so many different ways. All right. Next up, I just want to get to this story about our real unemployment in the US here. So this is a story out of Axios. They got some new data that tells us what I believe to be is a much truer story about the economic state of affairs in this country. And so what we're going to look at here is new, reporting by Felix Salmon out of the, I don't know if you say it's salmon or salmon. I believe it's Felix Salmon. So Felix Salmon in Axios gathered some data on the real unemployment rate in the US, and it is stunning. So let's take a look here. This is out of Axios, again, by Felix Salmon. Sorry. So by Felix Salmon, published October 13th, and it says exclusive, America's true unemployment rate. All right. So a person who is looking for a full-time job that pays a living wage, but who can't find one is unemployed. If you accept that definition, so a person who is looking for a full-time job that pays a living wage, but who can't find one is unemployed. So that's technically me right now. Like, I'm looking for a full-time job that pays me a living wage. I want that right now. That is what I'm looking for. I don't have one right now. So I am unemployed. If you accept that definition, the true unemployment rate in the US is a stunning 26.1%, according to an important new data set shared exclusively with Axios on HBO. So they're saying that the true unemployment rate right now, if you're talking about, if you define unemployment as a person who is looking for a full-time job that pays a living wage and who can't find one, if we define that as unemployed, then the true unemployment rate in the US right now is a stunning 26.1%, which is over 1 in every 4 people. 1 in every 4 workers is unemployed right now, or what some might call underemployed. So why it matters. The official unemployment rate is artificially depressed by excluding people who might be earning only a few dollars a week. It also excludes anybody who has stopped looking for work or is discouraged by a lack of jobs or by the demands of childcare during the coronavirus crisis. So here's where it gets really shocking. So if you measure the unemployed as anybody over 16 years old who isn't earning a living wage, the rate rises even further to 54.6% of all Americans. 54.6% of every person over 16 years old is not earning a living wage. For Black Americans, it's 59.2%. Let me say it again. 59.2%, nearly 60% of Black Americans do not earn a living wage. Let me say that one more time, okay? Nearly 60% of Black Americans right now, over age 16, do not earn a living wage in this country. The official definition of unemployment can be traced back to the 1870s, when a Massachusetts statistician named Carroll Wright diagnosed what he referred to as, quote, industrial hypochondria. Thanks, Massachusetts. That's on us here. You're welcome, world. So what Wright managed to do was, by restricting the unemployed label to men who, quote, really want employment, Wright managed to minimize the unemployment figure. Wright went on to found the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That shocked me. Like, the dude who was trying to downplay the unemployment numbers is the guy who invented the Bureau, who founded the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And he brought his unemployment definition with him. To this day, to be officially counted as unemployed, so to this day, to be officially counted as unemployed, you need to be earning no money at all, and you need to be actively looking for work. So if you work part-time 1 day a week for 2 hours a week, making $7.25 an hour, the minimum wage, you make $15 a week, you are technically considered employed by the statistics at the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So here's a look at the true and unofficial employment. So the official unemployment rate in the U.S. right now, as you can see, it peaked up over 15%, at the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic, and it's slowly declined to a mere 7.9%. That's the official unemployment rate, is 7.9%. Again, this is according to the Ludwig Institute for Shared Economic Prosperity. And meanwhile, the white true unemployment for white people in this country is 23.6%. True unemployment for black people in this country is 30%. So true unemployment for black people, you're talking about 1 in every 3 black people in this country is unemployed, if you consider unemployed somebody who is looking for full-time work, but does not make a living wage. That's if you define it that way. They don't have the employment that they need to survive. Essentially, it's not a living wage. They can't live off of the employment that they have at the moment. 30% of all black people in this country, 1 in every 3 black people in this country, is under those conditions. I am one of them. I happen to be one of them. So by the numbers, in January, when the official rate of unemployment was 3.6%, the true rate was 7 times greater, 23.4%. So the true rate of unemployment, if we're really talking about real unemployment here, being people that don't make enough money to survive with the jobs that they have, then you're talking about, it being 7 times greater than the actual official rate. The recession made everything worse. Only 46.1% of white Americans over the age of 16 and a mere 40.8% of black Americans now have a full-time job paying more than $20,000 per year. Almost 60% of black Americans don't have a full-time job that pays them more than $20,000 per year. Over 60% over the age of 16. So only 40% of black Americans over the age of 16 have a full-time job that pays them more than $20,000 per year. $20,000 per year doesn't even cover rent where I live in Massachusetts. $20,000 a year does not cut it. The bottom line, the unemployment catastrophe in America is not new. It's been at crisis levels for decades, but it has been hidden behind the official numbers. Ludwig's hope is that his new data will light a fire under Congress to address this national emergency. That blew my mind. Like I found out about this study and this new data from an interview I was watching on the Tom Hartman program with economist and professor of economics, Richard Wolff. And he discussed this and he talked about the Axios article. And he said, Tom Hartman referenced the article. Richard Wolff confirmed this is a very important article here. And it sheds a new light on this crisis that we're currently living under. And it's hidden behind these flowery statistics, these flowery unemployment numbers. And people like Donald Trump, this is one of the reasons that he was able to rise in popularity and to win the 2016 election is because he said things like, oh no, those unemployment numbers you have are fake. And if you're a real working person, you felt it. You knew, in your heart of hearts, especially the working, white working class, they felt it and they knew like, hey, you know what? He's right. That is bullshit. I've been unemployed and they keep telling me that we're in recovery and all these numbers are looking great, but my life isn't looking great. And so he tapped into that energy and that and people's anger and frustration with the system. And so I think that these numbers, I think, paint a much clearer picture of what's going on. And again, somebody like me, because I recently, and a couple of weeks ago, I got a part-time job working as a content editor for Tim Black, and I used to make, as a software engineer, I was making, $100,000 a year. And I was getting, that equates to what? Like, I think it's about $50 an hour. And, the job that I have to take now, because it's what I feel comfortable doing right now, because I hate my industry and I can't do it because of the issues around discrimination in the industry. I won't get into it right now, but I'm forced into a situation that I can't work inside of my own industry, and I'm forced to work outside of my industry and somewhere where I have to sort of start from the bottom and work my way up. And I'm accepting, pay that's more than 3 times less than what I used to make. But, it's work that I enjoyed. No complaint there, boss. Don't worry. Not mad at that. I totally understand, I'm being paid by an independent left-wing figure who cannot afford to pay, if he could pay me $50 an hour to do the work that I did, I'm sure he would if he could afford it, but he can't because he's independent. And, with black left independent media, he's not rolling in dough. And so they're doing their best. But the unemployment numbers, they don't capture my pain in this country, unfortunately. And not just mine, but for clearly the masses of people, the literal majority of Black Americans are unemployed by these numbers. The majority of white Americans are unemployed by these numbers, like the majority. So if you're listening to this, it's not just a black or white issue. It's across the board. These numbers are stark. 54% unemployment rate. If you're talking about people that are not earning a living wage, over age 16, not earning a living wage, you're talking about 54% of white Americans, 54% of all Americans, nearly 60% of Black Americans are not over age 16, are not earning a living wage right now. So, and only 40.8% have a full-time job that earns over $20,000 a year. Like, where do you think you can't, that's not a dignified wage. That's not a living wage right there. So, one thing I want to give a shout out. I see you in the comments. I haven't been able to read through all your comments yet, Brian, but I see you comment in there. Shout out to Brian Dew, who also, I just want to say, Brian, I did see your messages about the charts and your graphs and stuff. I looked through your data. You got some awesome data there. Thank you so much for putting that together. It helped to clarify some of the picture for me as well. This story that I'm covering today, I wanted to talk specifically about these numbers out of this Ludwig data set in framing, the unemployment as, people not earning a living wage. So that's why I stuck with the numbers that we have here and the charts that we have here. But I would like to cover, in the future, some of those other, the more official numbers and even the disparities between, the racial disparities, gender disparities, one of the important ones, I think, is the age disparity. Out of the numbers that I was looking through in your data, Brian, I was able to, I saw that, you highlight that, you show through that data that, like, the age disparity, people from age 16 to 34 have been disproportionately impacted by this latest recession. And so that's something that I think is crucial to talk about, because that's my generation one and it's important to me. But also because it tells you something about where the future of this country is headed, when the people, the youth of this country have been totally left behind this, for these past few decades now, through these economic recessions and depressions that we've had to face in just the first 2 decades of this century, and we've already gone through 3 economic crashes in the first two decades of the century: 2001 dot-com bubble, 2008 housing recession, and the 2020 COVID recession that will likely be proven to be a Great Depression. It will likely, they remember that they came out and they said, when they came out and they said, they confirmed that we have a institution that is responsible. I don't know the name off the top of my head. Brian will probably know the name off the top of his head, and we'll drop it in the chat probably. But there's an institution that makes the call as to whether they declare whether the U.S. is in economic recession. They base it off of a number of factors, and it's about like GDP contraction, quarter over quarter. And there's a way, if the GDP contracts by a certain amount, we're considered in an official recession. And if you remember, when they released that report that said we are officially in recession, it was sometime in around early summer or late spring, early summer, they released this report. And it said that we had been in recession since January. So before the pandemic hit, before COVID hit, the US was in recession. So we're calling it the COVID recession, but it's a misnomer. It's a capitalist recession. Call it what it is. It's yet another crash of capitalism, yet another failure of the capitalist system. And so this recession actually happened before the pandemic, actually before lockdowns began or anything like that. This recession began, but also just note that it took them months, at least it was 4 to 6 months for them to catch up and actually be able to see, based on the statistics, that to be able to actually confirm that, yes, we are in an economic recession. So in the same way, it will be delayed. When we find out that we were actually in a depression, they'll say, oh, you were in a depression for the past 4-6 months. We just didn't know it yet. But folks like Professor Wolff, economist Richard Wolff, say we're already in depression. This is already a depression, and he knows it because the numbers that we're seeing are worse than these economic numbers that we're seeing. The mass unemployment, the rate of unemployment, the pace that people became unemployed, the permanent job loss in the country, the housing crisis that's going on right now. All these factors, when you look at those, these numbers are unlike anything we've seen in the history of this country. I mean, the weekly unemployment claims numbers are still at historic highs every single week over week, for the entirety of this pandemic, going all the way back to March. We have had I think what was the first, when we first locked down, it was either late March or April, when the lockdown began. And 6 million people filed for unemployment, 6.6 million people at the peak of this pandemic. And that was it was literally 10 times worse than anything in the history of this country, of these numbers being tracked. And so it is almost without a doubt that this is worse than the Great Depression of the 20s and the 30s, the late 20s, roaring 20s led to the Great Depression of the 30s. So thank you, Brian, for the info there. He says NBER, the National Bureau of Economic Research, is the name of the institution that is responsible for telling us when we are in an economic recession. Thank you, Brian, for that info. And so Brian Du says, I'm all for having a new term that is defined this. Oh, did I do that? Hold on. Okay. So Brian says, I'm all for having a new term that is defined this way, but many of these people are employed at a low wage, and others, elderly, students, disabled, caregivers. You could even take this further and look at a period of time instead of a point in time. A lot of people are unemployed at some point over a 10-year period. So if you define it that way, it's probably 90% unemployment. That's very intriguing. That's another a very interesting way to look at it. Like, if you fail to work for a living wage for a week in the last 10 years, you are unemployed. And yeah, but I think this should have a new term. Yeah, that would be BLS has a term called underutilized. Interesting. Yeah, I think that underemployed, might better fit this, or underutilized. I think it might fit that, but I don't know if underemployed is already specific to something. I use the term, and I may be using it incorrectly, quite honestly. But I believe I've been calling these people underemployed, which means unemployed plus people who are part-time but want full-time, plus people who have given up looking for work. Okay, that's the underutilized. There's also that rate, right, Brian? They also use this rate. It's called the labor force participation rate as well, right? Like that's another way of them. I believe another way to look at it, so that you don't ignore. It doesn't exclude those people that would take a job if one came their way. There are a set of people in this country that would take a job if one came their way, but they've simply given up hope looking for a job because they've been looking for so long. And our unemployed numbers do not capture those people. And so I think that this is an important number to look at. I think it's a very important number to look at. I'm fine if it gets called something else, but I do think that underemployed is probably like a more accurate term. But I even think I like the argument being made that it is, these people are unemployed, because I mean, if you're not earning a living wage, what is that? And what do we how do we push that narrative and help people to grasp that shocking sort of data? Sometimes when you make, when you create new word, like a new term for something, people will see it as sort of like an elitist, academic, and not sort of based in real, people's sort of day-to-day lives. Brian says the data from Axios just also add a component related to wages, good, and count people who are elderly, students, disabled, caregivers, probably should not be working or cannot be working. So yeah, but that's the thing. Like, if you're a student, if you're a caregiver in this country, you're not taken care of properly. And so the odds are that it does attach with it some economic distress to it. Brian says, like, are retirees unemployed? By these numbers, they are, which is fine if you think that's the right term for it. Now, my only thing here is don't push that these people work. Push that they get income. Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That's always like, I don't want anybody to have to work more than what they need to. And I certainly don't want to like push these people into work. That's not my goal. It's more so to point out that there are people that need income, which I think is what you said there, that people that need income that aren't getting it. And that's the real issue, is like, these people need money, they need income. And we're going to talk about that in our next story, to really show what happened to people's income when they were receiving that the federal unemployment plus up, that $600 plus a month. Our next story, we're going to talk about that. The retirees should get income so they don't have to work. Exactly. But I'm really glad you're talking about this. No, I totally agree with you, Brian, that the retirees, caregivers, that should be recognized as important work. And I saw another piece, and I forget who was talking about this recently, but I saw another piece where they were talking about the fact that we need to have another system by which we measure the value of certain work, like care work, because then if we did, we would make sure the government it would be the responsibility of the government, or as us as a public, to say, well, you're doing a public good. It is a public good to care for your children, to care for children in general, and to raise children properly and to give them the care and nurturing that they need. And so we should value that properly, and we should pay those people accordingly, whether that be through some sort of, minimum income or basic income, whatever you want to call it. We should be getting money to these caregivers, retirees, folks like that. Another thing we're going to talk about, I hope that we get to the story on Social Security and the changes that are coming to the Social Security benefits. There's a bunch of important changes that are happening, and it's going to spell like, one of them is that they're raising the Social Security age and they're giving you less benefits. And so we need money for retirement and, so I definitely think we need to get more money to these people, not necessarily jobs. I don't want everybody working. I agree with old what's his name, father, one of the fathers of John Maynard Keynes, one of the fathers of capitalism, the Keynesian economics. He literally created a branch of economics. Keynesian economics, British guy. He wrote an article 100 years ago. It was written in 1930. And he was trying to predict what work today would look like, what work 100 years from now would look like. And his prediction was that by 2030, that we would only be working, on average, people would work under capitalism because of all the technological advancements that we get, that would allow us to work less. And so by 2030, he thought that we would work on average 15 hours a week, not 50 with a Y, 15 hours a week. So he thought that we would be working a maximum of 15 hours a week to satisfy what he called the atom inside of all of us, that urge that we all have to work, because of societal pressures that we are created that make us feel like we need to work in order to feel like we're worth something, that we have, it ties into our own self-worth, feeling of self-worth, feelings like we're somehow, that we're contributing to society in some way. So Brian goes on to say, because people don't realize how rare a full-time, full-year, good-paying job is in the U.S. in 2020. Exactly. This was another thing that happened where in those stats, some of Brian's stats, like, we got to do a show on that. And we got to have Brian on to talk about this stuff, honestly. We got to have you on, Brian, soon to talk about all this. But those, I have another buddy who's an economics major. We should, one of my greatest friends from college, Yvonne. He's an economics major. He works as an actuary right now, does actuarial work, and he's a great resource on this as well. So I would love to have you both on and talk some economics at some point. So, but Brian goes on to say, but that is very true. People don't realize how rare a full-time, full-year, good paying job is in the U.S. And we've replaced, and something that I saw in your data was how we've replaced full-time jobs with these part-time, with part-time work. So a lot of the employment we've had a decrease in full-time employment and a massive increase, or an increase in part-time employment. And so people are doing this like part-time gig work. Like driving for Uber would never be considered a job like 20 years ago. Nobody would consider that a job. It's not a job. Gig work isn't a job. You don't get a pension. You're not working towards a pension when you're working for Uber or Lyft or DoorDash or one of these gig jobs. So, or friggin' civil, the evictions gig work where you're evicting people. Like, those are not real jobs. Those aren't real jobs. And I'm sorry to say, they're just not. They're not sustainable, long-term, pension-bearing jobs. And so those aren't good jobs. And under Obama, that's what happened largely, was we, starting with the destruction under George Bush and focusing all of when we spend so much on military and foreign wars, but ignore the problems and the ails of the people right here at home, this is what we're left with. And so we keep on replacing good pensioned, union jobs with these precarious gig jobs. And this is, I think, in large part due to the destruction of the labor movement in the US through Red Scare tactics and the neoliberal and neo-fascist coalition that they built against the socialist and the left wing, communist, socialist, trade unionists. And they have by and large been successful at attacking unions in this country. And I think that this is the results that we're seeing. At its peak, union membership in the US was over 30%. 1 in every 3 workers was a part of a union at one point in the US. And now it's down below 10%, the majority of those being in public sector jobs. So it allows for exploitation and for these corporations to push us off into this gig work. We're, without our, even though we've produced all the value for this company, they take it, the handful of board of directors, they decide, this handful of people, totalitarian force, authoritarian force. Just a handful of people, the employer, the board of directors, and the major shareholders are allowed to make all the decisions for the masses of us. And these are where their decisions have led to gig jobs and Uber replacing things like, Uber replacing a taxi job. And, like, it's a damn shame to see. Brian goes on to say, one reason this measure of unemployment is good is because it takes into account that there are more elderly as a share of the population than ever. That's also true, through the boomer generation getting older, the baby boom generation there, they are, those people eat and need income, but aren't likely or able to work in many cases. Absolutely. And Social Security benefits, it's a fixed income. And it doesn't keep up as well with the rate of inflation. And while there are measures that do, it is increased every year based on the rate of inflation, but it's not precise. And it's not, it's not enough for many people. And your Social Security is based on how much money you earned over your life. So low wage workers are going to get less Social Security payouts than higher wage earners. So even to our elderly, we're like, we got to be classist about shit. Brian Dew says the group you're talking about are usually called, quote, discouraged workers, and they get captured in labor force participation. Boom. Yeah. So labor force participation rate, because they stop participating in the labor force when they drop out of unemployment. Yeah. Like yeah, the disgruntled worker rate is definitely at a high. Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, yes, like disgruntled workers, if we measure that, like that is that's like 90, I would say it's over 90% of workers are disgruntled workers at this stage, I would argue. Brian says Finland is going to the 4-day work week. I think that's beautiful. 6-hour days. Are you kidding me? Jesus Christ. Like I need to look this up. If Finland, yeah, Finland is considering a 4-day work week with 6-hour work days. Holy wow, that's amazing. Tammy was saying, is Italy already at a 4-day work week? I'm not sure about that. Yeah, the proposal, yes, the proposal would see Italy's working week cut down from 40 hours to 32 hours in Emilia Romagna, that's in northern Italy, effectively creating a 4-day work week. Well, as many longtime listeners of this show will know, the Emilia Romagna region of Italy is the region of Italy that has a very special law called the Marcora Law that supports workplace democracy. 1/3 of the GDP from the Emilia Romagna region of Italy is created by democratic workplaces, worker cooperatives. So the worker cooperative region of Italy, is looking to shorten the work week from 40 hours to 32 hours. Wouldn't you know, when you have democracy in the workplace, people wind up with shorter work weeks. Surprise, freaking surprise. This is why I champion workplace democracy here on the show. And I just can't emphasize it enough. It's the fundamental change we must make in our economy is to provide democracy in the workplace. One worker, one vote on all major decisions affecting people. That's what to do, where to do it, who gets to do it, how it's done, and what to do with the profits of that work. So that should be decided democratically. And if we did that, and if we really believed in democracy, the first place that we would enact democracy is in the workplace. And so it is no surprise to me whatsoever that the Emilia Romagna region of Italy is the region that is looking to reduce their work week from 40 hours to 32 hours. That would be a 4-day work week that they're looking at, 8-hour days. This in Finland, this proposal it was in January apparently, and the proposal was in Finland for a 4-day 6-hour work week. So that is, as always, Brian is spot on. I'll just pull up real quick so folks can see here. So Finland is considering a 4-day work weeks with 6-hour work days that would allow people to spend more time with their loved ones. And it's beautiful. That is 24-hour work weeks. That is exactly what we need. And people will be more productive in that time. I promise you, they've done the studies. People end up being more productive when they have less time because they don't go and mess around with their time. They're like, okay, I only got 6 hours to do this. I'm going to do my work. I'm not going to be on Facebook or like on my phone or like sneak in extra smoke breaks because I can't stand the job. Like, I just want to get out. They're like, Tammy, I think is the one that might've told me about it, or I forget who, but someone was telling me about how in like Japan or somewhere, or in China or Japan, I forget which one, there's the culture of work is such that they have these really long work days, and like people are all like trying to like see who could be the last one to leave, but like people will do like nothing all day at work. Like they'll like just be like fucking around and like taking naps and stuff just because they want to show that they're at work at the office for longer periods of time. They're not actually doing work, but they're just like there at the office. And so it's not productive, and people aren't productive when they have to spend massive amounts of time at work. And so you'll find that people end up being more productive in this situation. And so I am wholeheartedly in favor of such a thing. And I hope that we bring about, real policy changes like this. I commend Finland for this proposal, and I hope that it takes off and actually, gets, enacted into policy. So, yeah, so not currently included in the agenda, but their new prime minister, Sanna Marin, is considering a 4-day work week and 6-hour-long shifts. That's awesome. She looks like a very young prime minister too. Wow. Huh? She's 34. What? Prior to starting her work as a prime minister of the Finnish government, 34-year-old Sanna Marin, who's currently the second youngest prime minister in the world. Damn. How's she only the second youngest prime minister? Who the hell is the youngest? That's amazing. Yeah. Wow. 34 years old. Damn. Yo, I'm 33. She's the president of a country. She's the prime minister of a fucking country, and she's 30. Yo, I'm so unaccomplished. I am nothing.
So the royal baby was born, and they're royalty.
I know, but that's F royalty though. I'm talking about this woman. She done started at the bottom. No, I don't know that. I'm just teasing. But yeah, so that was. Brian says, but Europe works much less than the US. Yep. Germany, they have a shorter work week. I think it's a 35-hour work week that they're looking to cut to 32 hours. And it'll be America that's out there. Our average work week over here is actually closer to 50 hours a week is actually our average work week. So we work more hours than what our full-time work week would suggest. Excuse me, that was gross. What if America says everyone should play a positive and needed role in the society? What we have now is a huge waste of potential. Yeah, like now what we talk about as like a positive and needed role, like I think that people should, my goal is to be in a place where people can actually like look to develop themselves and to achieve like I forget how Noam Chomsky phrased it right now, but it's like self-discovery should be important, and self-growth and development, and we should be able to focus on those things. If we can have a world, I don't need people to be, like working to, feel like they're like a necessarily contributing member, but we should look at what the necessary work is, and we should divide that up fairly amongst all of us, right? Like we got to grow food, right? We can't expect some people. Now there's going to be some people that are like, I love growing food and I want to grow food all the time. And that's totally cool. If there's some people like that and we get enough people like that, great. But if there's some shortcoming with all that and we say, you know what, we still, with all the people that love making food and love growing food, we still don't have enough food to feed everyone. So we have to spread that work around. There's got to be some way we can calculate this out. We can get together. We can calculate it out with really smart people like Brian Do and my buddy Yvonne can all get together, and the economists of the world, and they can crunch the numbers and they can figure out, okay, we have this many workers. If they all work, we need this. We need to produce this much food. look at all the regions, split that work up evenly, figure out where how the best way to do that. And we can share in that work. And everybody got a little, we all got to grow our own tomatoes and peppers in our gardens. We all got to have a little home garden or a community garden, and you contribute in that way, and we'll split up all the sort of grunt work together fairly amongst all of us. But whatever it is, we'll split that all up. And whatever else is, it's like we all just take the time and we do whatever the hell, and we get some time to spend with our family and our loved ones, and again try to have some fulfillment of our own, just self-growth and self-development, and being able to have the freedom and liberty to explore that. That's my goal. Brian says, what up, America? Yeah, there are people trying to do better to capture contributions to community, including some economists on the left. Yeah, absolutely. That's what up says, maybe we could pay childbearing parents. Yes, absolutely. Like, not just childbearing, but like pay foster parents, pay anyone that is, if you're caring for a child, that's a or what up America says, or the one who takes care of them full time and gives up work. Absolutely. Like, we should be paying people, foster parents, whatever it is, because it's a service to the community to raise a child that's not going to end up, committing crimes, violent crimes against other people. Those are developmental, behavioral developmental things that we can correct with a lot of the time by having good, nurturing early on in life. And so that's a crucial service. You're performing a public service by raising your child, by being at home and caring for your child. That's a public service. And so we should pay those people accordingly. And the public should be responsible for making sure that those people are kept whole.
Foster system in the U.S., that's a different topic.
Yes, foster system. Yeah, Tammy's saying foster system in the U.S. I'm not talking about, like, you see, and this is the problem, is that, like, absolutely, there are foster homes where there are abuses in foster homes.
Taking care of anybody, including babysitting, whatever, that counts.
Yes. Tammy's saying, like, taking care of anybody, including babysitting, whatever, like, that counts. Yeah.
Elderly care.
Yeah, elderly care, any kind of care, just like. Yeah, absolutely. Like any dependent person, that person should be covered, and they should be compensated the same way that I was being compensated as a freaking engineer who was destroying the economy in many ways. Like I was harming, working class people. I was taking away their jobs with the software that I was building sometimes. And I'm getting paid $100,000 a year to do that work, but a nurse or, like a CNA or a phlebotomist or a lab technician or like, a home care nurse or a LPN or, whatever. It's like, these people are paid like, less than living wages or barely a living wage or less than a living wage. And so why should we not? And even a mom, a mom who, or dad who just had a baby or adopted a baby. Cause I said foster, but I meant adoption, not foster. I kept saying foster, but I mean adopting, but also foster, like foster care. But like, there are issues with foster care right now. And we can talk about those. That's another story for another day that I can't get into right now. But we should definitely be paying the people that take care of children, enough to take care of those children and live comfortably. Brian says, so many countries have a child benefit / allowance that gets monthly checks to parents. Yes. And like in countries like Estonia, they also have like, it's almost 2 years of paid parental leave, and they give parental leave to both of the parents. And so France is another, like France, there's so many that do it so much better than us, that have literally from a year up to almost 2 years of nearly like 90% wages. And in Estonia, they take the average wage of the mother, because they take the average wage of the two parents, and they average it, and that's the pay that the stay-at-home parent gets, is the average of the two wages, which yet again does work to like try to close that gender pay gap. If the woman stays home, she's not going to be paid necessarily like that low rate. She'll actually get a boost in her pay because it gets averaged out with her partner's pay. So yes, great point. Great point, Brian. Brian says the former prime minister left after he tried to underpay a small set of workers and the whole country went on strike. Holy shit. That's amazing. That's so dope. She was a cashier. She was a cashier? What? That's so, see, so she did. She started at the bottom and now she's a prime minister, y'all. All right. That's dope. All right. All right. 34 years old. That's nuts. How the hell do you go from cashier to prime minister by 34? Damn. Like, that's like, you know, AOC is going to be our next president of the United States. I'm just calling it now. What Up America says there are just so many unpaid roles in society that are not given actual direct money. What you call developing yourself should also be paid for. Absolutely. That is an important role in society because maybe, you know, they talked about like, I forget who it was. And they have this story about like how, who's the dude who like went and like, oh, I'm not probably not going to be like, but anyhow, there's a story of like a old like artist and he like went and walked up and he sat there and he kept on staring at this big rock, this like big hunk of rock. And he would just show up there every day and he would stare at this big hunk of rock. It was like one of the like, no, like Michelangelo or one of these Da Vinci or Michelangelo, you know, just went up and every day for months, they just went up and they stared at this rock and just stared at this rock. And everyone would come and ask them, what are you doing? What are you doing? And he would just respond, I'm working. And he would just every day stare at this rock, just go up there morning, you know, eat breakfast, go up, stare at this rock. And he did that for months and months on end. And then one day he just came up there with a chisel or all his tools and stuff and just like started going to work on this thing, you know, going to work on this thing and created like some work of art that is now, I forget what the hell it's called. It's some famous work of art right now. And created this like beautiful, famous work of art. But it took months of just like doing what some people look at as doing nothing. And I think that a person and that art is a gift to the world. It's a gift to all of us that we get to see it, experience it. And so I think that holds an immeasurable value, and it's very hard to try to put a price on that. It's culture, and it's immensely valuable to us. But in our current state of affairs, we don't value that work properly at all whatsoever. All right, so I want to get to one more story before we go here because we got to wrap up. We're already at 2 hour mark, and I really don't want to keep these streams too long. So I will try to be better about taking comments only more towards the end of the show so that we can really get through the stories early and then wrap up with comments and such. But I've been bad. So let me do this final story before we go. I think this is the last one I'm going to have time for here, unfortunately. I think we're skipping that. Okay. So give me one sec. Sorry. Just figuring out. I got two things I need to show for this. And all right. So, and if you're still watching this and you haven't done so already, please do me a favor, hit the like button down below. Follow us if you're on Twitch, and also please subscribe on YouTube and share this out. Hit the share button, share it far, share it wide, share it that way and every which way you can. Facebook, Twitter, whatever the hell else there is, Insta, whatever, wherever you can, share this out. Let the world know. Please watch the stream. We need to grow the channel. We need more subscribers. We need to grow our base. So please subscribe. Also, support the show if you can afford to do so. Support us on Patreon, patreon.com/radical democracy. I believe there are links in the description box below, but you can definitely see it right there. Patreon.com/radical democracy. You can also leave us a one-time tip on coffee at coffee.com/radical democracy, ko-fi.com/radical democracy. Please support the show. All right, let's get to this last story. I'll just try to cruise through this one and then we'll chat a bit and then we'll dip set. Okay, so not going to get to our Social Security story, unfortunately, but that's okay. Let me just get this ready. Okay. Okay, sorry. Just had to queue up. All right. Okay, so it has been, this pandemic, we started locking things down. The pandemic really hit in February. We started to, become aware of it. By March, we were beginning lockdowns, and by April, we were in full lockdown mode. And Congress provided, through what's known as the CARES Act, a economic stimulus act was passed by Congress that included in it a $600 a week unemployment benefit to all unemployed workers. This is additional benefits on top of their regular unemployment benefit. So this was an extra. It's called the Federal Pandemic Unemployment Compensation. And that program lasted until the last week of July 25th for 49 states and July 26th for New York. And people received that last check around sometime at the end of July or the beginning of August or so. And so that $600 a week payment ran out. There was a point at one point, Donald Trump came in and he passed an executive order. He signed an executive order that added an additional. Once that ran out, he signed an executive order that enabled a $300 a week payment from the federal payment. And then he also encouraged states to add $100 on top of that per week, but most states did not. Only 4 states added the extra $100 a week payment to bring it up to $400 extra a week for unemployment benefits. But that was only a 6-week temporary benefit, and that has since expired. So just wanted to take a look at some really stark numbers here. JP Morgan, the bank, JP Morgan Chase, did a study, and they just looked at the savings accounts and the money that was in people's checking, their checking account balances. So they looked at people's checking account balances over the course of starting at the beginning of the year until the end of August. And what they found was shocking, if you ask me. And so let's take a look at 2 of the charts from that study. So okay. So here are 2 really important charts, I think, that show something really dramatic here happening. And so I just wanted to go through both of these really quickly and talk about them. So the first chart that you're seeing at the top, figure 1, this is the spending of the unemployed. So weekly spending in 2020, employed versus unemployed. So the orange line that you're seeing there is the employed people. The blue line is the unemployed. And you can see their weekly spending, average weekly spending for employed versus unemployed for the entire year, right? So starting in January, you can see it's around an average of around $600 starting in January. So starting here, you'll see it averages around $600 here. Then spending, it looks like right before lockdown hit, it looks like spending increased. People probably buying. That's what I think we're seeing there, is people buying supplies, stocking up on toilet paper. We all remember the toilet paper, crisis of 2020, where we were people were emptying toilet paper from the shelves as if this was like a, some sort of like stomach ailment that was going on. But so I think that spike is people, spending to prepare for the lockdowns. Then you see a sharp decline after that. From the end of February until the middle of March, you see a sharp decline from the nearly $700 it peaked at right before the lockdowns to below $400 weekly spending. Then you can see it stayed around that for a few weeks, and then it started to increase at the end of April. So this is where people started to receive their unemployment benefits in March. So people started to receive those unemployment benefits, and that $600 benefit started at the beginning of April. So at the beginning of April is when people started to receive the $600 a week benefit, was at the beginning of April. So you can see here what happens at the beginning of April. It starts to trend upward. Now we start to see it start to increase. The weekly spending increases. It keeps going up. You can see that it recovers, not to, it doesn't, it makes it back to the $600 weekly average, which was around the normal. For employed people, it took all the way until around July to get back there. It took around right towards the end of June, beginning of July. It took till then for them to get back there. Unemployed people were able to get back to the $600 a week average at the end of May. So within a month of having this unemployment benefit, the $600 extra a week, they were back up to normal spending habits. So people were able to maintain just like they were before. And you'll see something interesting happen even after that, is as they continue to receive those unemployment benefits, the spending actually increased. So it got back up to sort of the peak levels of over $700, and it stayed there for a few weeks until the end of August, at which point we see a sharp decline, yet another, not as sharp as the lockdown decline, but you can see a fairly sharp decline in the spending, particularly with the unemployed. That's the blue line. The employed people, it's been steady. It had remained steady since around the beginning of July, end of June. It was averaging around $600. So back to where it used to be, essentially. So I think that's one thing. The other one that's really stark, I think, is the checking account balances. So this is people's savings, and this was really stark, I would say. So these are checking accounts at JP Morgan Chase. This is Chase Bank. So these are people's checking accounts balances among the unemployed, roughly. This is the median checking account end of month balance of employed versus unemployed. So median means half of all people are above this, half of all people were below this for their JP Morgan Chase Bank customers. So as you can see here, the median checking account end of month balance of for employed people, it's the orange line. For unemployed people, again, it's the blue line. And so for the unemployed, you can see that the median checking account end of month balance for unemployed is always around the same or slightly higher for the first, couple of months. Then, lockdowns hit, and around the beginning of April, the end of March, beginning of April, the $600 a week federal pandemic unemployment compensation begins. And we can see a sharp uptick for, this is dramatic. This is the end of month balances. And you're seeing it's up from, around $1,000 to it jumps from around 1.2 thousand, in April. It's at 1.8 thousand, and then it's on a steady incline from that point forward, right? So checking account balances are increasing over time for the unemployed. For the employed, it largely stays about the same. It went up a little bit. I think that's because of restaurants closing. You're able to spend less, going out, things like that. So I think that's why we see a little bit of change for the employed people. But by and large, nothing really changed for employed people. If you stayed employed throughout the pandemic, not much change for your economic situation, really. Unfortunately, in a sane world, we would have given those people hazard pay, and their pay, they should have saw their savings spike up the same way that unemployed people did. It's only fair. They're working people. They're the ones putting their lives on the line. They absolutely deserve to be compensated. And if we had, fair a fair economic system, those people would have been compensated for it. But unfortunately, private capitalists, they did not feel the need to pay their workers. And so nothing largely, by and large, changed for the employed people. That's the orange line you see at the bottom. But for unemployed people, man, it was stark. I mean, it completely diverges from the employed, and they really start to build up a savings for unemployed people with that $600 extra a week. Then you see in July that the $600 a week supplement expires. And then what happens? It falls off a freaking cliff and it drops. So just immediately that savings is drying up, and it's trending downward. And the longer people stay unemployed with no government benefit, this trend will continue. So I just thought that this was a really stark chart that deserves some attention and just shows that people's savings are drying up. Unemployed workers are, their savings are evaporating, and there's no help in sight coming from our government. And that's the job of the government, is to help people that are in need. And it's been a massive failing of our Congress and the Trump administration to leave people this way. And I mean, the more that we see it, Pelosi just rejected the $1.8 trillion stimulus that would have included $400 a week benefit, as well as $1,200 for every, adult in the country, a $1,200 check. And so they rejected that, even though it's likely the most that you're going to get out of the Republicans. And it's not even guaranteed to pass the Senate, but it at least would have, been encouraged by Donald Trump, and he would have been able to use some political capital to get that passed. But they see it as a political, somehow the Democrats believe that this would benefit Trump too much if Trump is seen to be helping to provide a stimulus to the economy right before the election. So they don't want to help Trump. And because they don't want to help Trump, they're just fine with hurting millions of working class Americans. In order to hurt Trump, they're fine hurting millions of people, as long as it also hurts Trump. So they're fine letting the rest, the working class just suffer in the meantime while they get nothing for political reasons.
Just to clarify, when they say spending in the first chart, that means all like electronic transactions, credit and debit cards, which includes utility payments and probably rent, meaning there's more spending because they're able to pay those things.
Yeah, Tammy just points out that, like, when they say spending, it's not, on that first chart, they're not just talking about spending on like frivolous things, or like just like, they're talking about like utilities and your rent and things like that. And so it's here you have people finally able to actually pay for these things. I mean, we can check out an article that they wrote where this was first referenced, and an NPR article where I found this, and they talk about how, like, they were, some people were able to pay off some bills for the first time. They were just trying to, like, I know for me, what it allowed me to do was to pay off credit card debt. I paid off credit card debt, and I was able to restore my license and my registration on my car so that I can actually drive my car around. Like, I have no hope living where I live in Massachusetts. There's like no hope of getting to and from a job if you don't have a car where I live, right? And so I needed that in order to look for work, and I needed to be able to have a legal vehicle riding around, a license and a registration. But I owed like over $1,000 to our toll agency in the state, and so I had to pay $1,000 while I was unemployed. I had to pay $1,000. For tolls that I racked up while I was working, and I didn't realize, like, that the stupid Easy Pass thing that I have, wasn't working correctly, and so I thought that it was being paid for. It wasn't being paid for while I was working, but in order to get to and from a job, I spent over $1,000 on travel, which didn't get compensated, for that, unfortunately. And that was required to pay before I could even get my license. And I don't know, in this country, as a Black person driving around in any way that's not totally legal, you just feel a deep fear, a sense of fear everywhere you drive. When I was I had to drive. I drove without a license at times, because I needed to get to the grocery store, and there's no way to do that without a car. And I didn't have the money, and so, like, yeah, I drove my car, and like, I was always afraid, like, if I get pulled over, if they see my registration was expired at one point. and I couldn't get the car registered until I paid those tolls, which are obviously regressive taxes. 1 second. Tammy wants to say something.
Question: what is the y-axis on the bottom chart?
The y-axis, I think it represents thousands of dollars. So one is $1,000, and people's the average savings is one is $1,000, I believe. So yes, I believe. Oh no. I see what the y-axis is actually yeah, so let me pull up this chart and show you, because I actually realized what it actually is saying. Let me. Yes. The median, and they don't want to tell us what the median number is. They didn't tell us what the median number is specifically. They only tell us they call the median is considered 1.0 is the median. And so they're showing, let me pull that up. Sorry. All right, so in figure 2 here, so you'll see along the y-axis, it has the, it goes from 1 to 2.4. And they say the median checking account end of month balance of employed versus unemployed, January 2020 is equal to 1.0. So they started it at whatever the median is in January, whatever the median was in January. Exactly. So it's calling that like the index, yes, exactly, is indexed at 1.0. So that's considered, that says that at, 1 is like, that might mean $500. It could mean 10,000. We don't know. It doesn't matter, because all it's saying is how much does it differ from that January figure, right? So everything else that we're seeing is relative to that, whatever the median balance is in January, which again, they just don't want to give those details about those numbers for their customers. I'm sure it's abysmally low, but for the median numbers, but whatever it is, it's indexed at 1. And so when it gets to 2, it means it's 2 times, like in May, when it's at 2, it means it's 2 times higher, whatever it was in January. It doesn't mean 2,000 versus 1,000. It just means 2 times whatever it was in January. So sorry about that. And thank you for clearing that up to Tammy. And I think Brian jumped in on that as well. So thank you for that, Brian and Tammy, for that correction. Brian says part of the story with the bottom chart is maybe the account balances were smaller for the unemployed. Yes. So absolutely. It doesn't mean that they had the same exact numbers. So we know the unemployed were disproportionately lower wage. Yes, absolutely. So that's really important to note. So maybe their balances was 100 and became 240. Exactly. Like the numbers, it means the unemployed, they might have had balances of 1,000. The unemployed might have had balances of 100. And it just means that by, May, it was twice as much as whatever that starting amount was. While the employed person went from 1,000 to 1,100. So that's also important. And that's also important because that second chart says, it doesn't mean that necessarily the unemployed had more money, than the employed. It just means that they were growing at a higher rate than the unemployed people, than their savings were.
The bad things about those charts is if you just look at it, it's going to look bad. It's going to make the average person who doesn't know how to properly look at it hate unemployed people for having more.
Yeah, Tammy's saying that, the thing about those charts, we're going to get Tammy a mic, I swear, soon, promise. And she says the bad thing about those charts is that if you just look at it, it could make some people sort of have some resentment towards unemployed people, because they look at it and they're like, well, why are the unemployed people have more money than I do as a working person? And listen, that's something that you should be upset about, but you shouldn't be upset with the unemployed people. You should be upset with your employer who's not paying you more. Like that should be who you're upset with, not the working the person that's not working.
But not just that, it's not saying they necessarily have more money than you. It's saying whatever they're.
No, of course. Oh, yes. Let me be clear about that. Yes, absolutely. Yes. Tammy's right about that. So it's not even saying that they necessarily have more money than you either. It's, it's literally just saying it's based on their starting amount. They might have increased more from their starting amount than you did, but that might mean you still have less overall. And so, but that being said, like, I think that regardless, there's always this thing here where people are prone to, they got the unemployed people mad at the employed people, because the unemployed people are all mad because they're on this short-term, insecure benefit that can change at any given moment and constantly changes, and it's short-term, it's temporary. And so they're angry that, oh, at least you're allowed to keep your job. And then the working person is like, yeah, but my job is like putting my life on the line and putting me at risk. And I would love to just be able to sit home and not put myself at risk. And then they get mad at the unemployed people that are able to, to stay safer and to still have their finances covered. And so they get these two groups of working people mad at each other, instead of being mad at the capitalists and the people in power that should be giving, again, we should have, if they were just like, other countries didn't have the same unemployment issues that we had, because all over Europe, because they just simply, the government covered the payrolls for companies. Easy solution, just cover the damn payroll. You don't got to kick a bunch of people off the payroll. But beyond that, like something like a universal basic income, right? It covers that. It says no matter whether you're working or you're not working, we're still going to give you that $600 plus. Should have been given to every single person, not just the unemployed. It should have been a $600 a week universal basic income. Pay it out through Social Security. Pay it out through the IRS. I don't care. You can pay it out through Social Security. Make it a universal, give Social Security benefits to all. Make it universal Social Security, and just give everybody $600 a week extra. And that's how it should have been handled. Whether you're working, whether you're not working. If you're working, that's $600 on top of whatever you're already being paid. If you're not working, it's just the $600. So that's how it should have been handled. But instead, we have this insane system where they decided, benefits us more, throw it off onto the, to the government, let them handle it. That's what unemployment is already, right? It's like, it's a failure of private capitalists, right? They fail to be able, they decide that for profits, it's more profitable for them to get rid of you than it is to keep you on their payroll. So they fire you for whatever reasons they have. It's based on profit. It is because it will be more profitable to them that they make that decision. And then, so they throw you off because it's profitable. And then they say, oh, and now the government and the taxpayers have to go and foot that bill and take care of the person. And so it's for the failure of the capitalist, private capitalist institution, but they throw it off as the public having to bear the, suffer the consequences of that and bear the burden of it. So, yes. So Brian says, but yeah, the important point is the drop off because Congress cut employment benefits in essence. Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, absolutely. It's that cliff that people hit. And it's really tying it to the fact that like the damage, the economic toll that this is going to take still hasn't really shown up yet in our economy. It still hasn't fully shown up yet because people still have some savings still. Their savings are still higher than they were when they went into this crisis, right? So they still have more at this stage at the end of August, people still had more than they had started in the pandemic with. So, but it's rapidly decreasing and it will fall below that at some point. And I can tell you, I was able to, again, pay down all of my credit card debt. And also, I paid off my credit card debt, and I saved up some money, right? So and right now I'm living off of that savings right now. Like this week, my unemployment just ran out, and I don't know. It's up in the air. I don't know whether I'll be able to get any further unemployment benefits. I don't know if I'll be able to get pandemic unemployment assistance. That's what I'm hoping for. If I don't, I will be in some really dire times. Things will be really tight and really tough, and I will have to get back to full-time work in the software as a software engineer. I will just have to do it, and it's something that I recognize that I might just have to do. I'll tell you what happens if I have to do that. I will not be able to do this show in the same capacity. I promise you that. And so please help us to avoid that by supporting us on Patreon, patreon.com/radical democracy. Please, 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 please. If you can afford it, please support us in that way. Literally every, dollar that we get is like, it's a little while longer that we're able to stick around and do this full time. And if we get enough support soon enough, then we can just keep it going forever and we don't have to, slow down or stop or anything like that. So please, please, please support the show if you can afford to. Please support. And thank you so much to everyone that's already supporting. You're all, I deepest thanks and gratitude to all of you. Thank you so much to our Patreon community. You're all amazing. And we're so damn lucky to have the community that we have. It's freaking amazing. You guys blow us away with your support. And we're so thankful, so grateful. Any other comments we want to get to? Oh, also one-time tips, coffee.com/radical democracy, ko-fi.com/radical democracy. While Tammy's pulling up some more comments, if there are any, I'll just tell you, I do have some more shows planned for this week. I do want to try to do a show for Raised Fist Media. So I'll probably be making an appearance on Raised Fist Media. You can check us out at Raised Fist Media on Twitter. But I mean, the account still has no frigging picture because of Kwame and no description. So I understand if you look at that and you're like, no, I'm not going to subscribe to this stupid ass thing because it's not real. So Kwame, get on it, dude, or give me the damn credential so I can do it. But yes, so find us on Twitter, but more importantly on YouTube, Raised Fist Media, all separate words on YouTube, Raised Fist Media. So check us out there. And I plan to do a show talking about Lupe Fiasco losing his goddamn mind, trying out here like defending cops and all kinds of stupid shit. And so going to talk about Lupe Fiasco and Royce da 5'9's new podcast and an episode that they did where they talked about policing. And Lupe had some of the worst takes I could have ever imagined coming out of this dude's mouth. So you'll know if you watch the show enough, you'll hear me quote Lupe from time to time, something that I do in my general life. And I was very ashamed to see his take on policing and the state of policing in America. Very ashamed. So I plan to do an episode on that soon. Comments now. Shin says, you once said you want to help Black businesses, but it does not matter what race the business owner is. They are still capitalists. Yeah, like I want to businesses. Shin goes on to say, businesses I know people need to survive, but we should still be suspicious of small businesses because eventually they will become big corporations. An example of that is Amazon. Yeah, like I don't want capitalist businesses. Like my goal is no capitalist businesses. I want the change that we need to make is not small versus big. It's democratic versus undemocratic. I want democratic businesses, democratic workplaces. And I don't care how big a democratic workplace grows. It doesn't matter how big it grows. It's just more people able to participate in that democracy. And so I'm not afraid of a company being small or big under a socialist company. I'm concerned with the capitalism. It's the structure of capitalism, the totalitarian, authoritarian structure of capitalism, the undemocratic structure of capitalism. That is the issue. So I support Black worker cooperatives, and I am supportive of that movement, but not Black capitalist businesses at all. Check out the piece that we did on Killer Mike's Bank. I don't know why that video was dope that I did. And I don't know why it doesn't have more views. I'm truly like, what the hell. So I keep trying to tweet it out because I don't know what the hell I got to do to get that thing recognized, but that's a dope ass take that you're not going to get everywhere, that needs to be said. And so I'm really disappointed that video hasn't done better at this point. So check it out. Killer Mike opens a bank, but Black capitalism won't save us is the title of the video. Check it out. Shin says, has there ever been socialism in Jamaica? We've had like socialist leaders. Michael Mann, am I effing that up? Michael Manley, sorry. So Michael Manley was a socialist leader. He was friendly with Cuba, Castro, Chavez. So he was friendly with with Cuba, with Castro, and was trying to build a a socialist government. It's actually how my father obtained the land that he has. Michael Manley came out and told people, like, listen, use up the land. And if you use the land, if you farm the land, we will send people, the government will send people to come and buy whatever you produce that you can't eat amongst your family and your neighbors. Whatever you can't eat, we'll come in and we'll buy it from you. Grow as much food as you can, and we will come and we will buy it from you, whatever you can't eat yourself. And so that's how my father got the land that he has to this day. My father's a farmer in Jamaica, and so they are not socialist. They are a capitalist government. Unfortunately, it's just a capitalist economy, capitalist government. They still use the same employer-employee model. It's capitalist from top to bottom. So no, unfortunately, there's never really been socialism in Jamaica, but there's been socialist leaders who wanted to move the country in that direction, but unfortunately, they were not allowed to for a multitude of reasons. I think that Michael Brooks did a really great piece on this. He did an illicit history on Jamaica. Check that out. It's a great piece. I mean, I learned some stuff about my country that I didn't know. And so please definitely check that out. Michael Brooks, Illicit History on Jamaica. It's a great one. So he talks about Michael Manley and that and all that happened there. Tammy also dropped a link to that Killer Mike video in the chat. So check that out when y'all get some time and share that out, please. Share that video. I'm going to start adding. I need to start adding Killer Mike in that thing. Like, I'm going to call Killer Mike out on that. Like, I need Killer Mike to see that video. I need that thing to go viral. We need that thing to be bigger than what it is. So please share that video out. All right. All right. Any other comments that we want to get to? We're going to wrap things up soon. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight. It's a longer stream that I wanted to make happen. I really got to tighten that up. Working on it. Got to clip this stream. I might not do another stream until I get the clips from this stream. I don't know. Because I really got to start to get more clips up, because the live streams, it's a limited thing. Not everyone can do the live streams. And I really want to make sure that we're reaching the largest audience possible. So I got to get more short clips. I got to start to work on shorter stories as well, and just tightening up my own scales. So Tammy also dropped links to that TMBS illicit history in the chat as well. So check that out, y'all. That is such a great illicit history. Yes, absolutely. That's it. So check it out. Great piece. I learned so much in that, and it's just a really cool, interesting piece. And we'll tell you about some of the sort of socialist roots in Jamaica that never, unfortunately, didn't get a chance to really take hold because of some of the gangs and such, as well as U.S. imperialism. Like, that cannot be understated. It was U.S. imperialist, U.S. backed, essentially coup in Jamaica. So check it out, and it's really intriguing stuff. Please, if you haven't done so already, hit the like button, subscribe, share this out far and wide. Really, thank you to everyone for being here with us tonight. Big shout out to Brian for all the great insights, all the great economic insights. Really appreciate you, Brian. Thank you so much for being here with us and for helping us out with that, and for providing all that great info, as well as all the data that you sent me. That is great, and I can definitely see that getting used on this show. So we'll definitely have to coordinate on some stuff. Thank you for the offer on the charts, and I will definitely take you up on that offer in the future. But just wanted to talk about some of the statistics that I saw out of that Axios article and the discussion around those numbers as well. And I think we had a good discussion around how to approach those numbers. And so that was all very, very cool stuff. Appreciate all of you. We're going to get out of here. Big shout out to super producer Tammy for all the work that she does. She is a champ and my personal hero, and just grateful for her and everything that she does. So thank you so much to Tammy, and to all of the Patreon community for all of their support as well. All right, folks. So we will be back with another show. We will be skipping tomorrow because I've really got to catch up on video editing. And so unless something big happens, probably going to skip tomorrow's live episode. So I'll try to keep you posted in the Discord server if anything changes on that. But if we have some breaking news, I'll do breaking news, but that's probably all I'm going to do tomorrow, just to catch up on video editing. Like I said, probably be back with you for a live episode on Wednesday. I can't believe it, y'all, but tomorrow marks 14 days from we are essentially 2 weeks from the presidential election right now, and it's wild, and I think it's going to be a crazy election. I've already made my prediction. Joe Biden wins, but anything can freaking happen, and it's going to be a wild one, and you know it's going to be an emotional night. I hope you all can come here and hang with us for that. I really look forward to it. I cannot wait. I hope we have our whole community in here for that one and a whole lot more. I expect a busy stream. I'm going to try to really grow the channel that day, because that's the last like major event for the foreseeable, like major political event for this foreseeable future. Of course, there's always breaking things that pop up and whatever, inauguration will happen, all that sort of stuff. But like, this is a major event, the last one I can think of for a while. So really want to try to use that to help grow the channel, grow the show. So we're going to do a long stream on election day, possibly like a massive stream on election day. So we'll see, like maybe half of the day, like 12-hour stream or 10-hour stream or something absurd. But we'll probably hit like 8-hour stream on election day, all the way just covering results, everything like that. So really looking forward to that. Oh boy, it's going to be a wild one. So What Up America says, given how well 2020 has gone so far, I imagine election day will go perfectly. Yeah, exactly. Right. Like I'll be honest. I don't think we're going to, there's some chance that we don't have a result of the election on election day because of mail-in balloting. There might, if the race is close enough, it is almost a guarantee that we're not going to get results. If it's a close race, we won't get results on election day. So that's going to be another thing that it's going to be very difficult trying to make some of those calls on election day. So election day might turn into election week, and we plan to cover the whole damn, spiel of it. So we will cover it all. So keep an eye out for that. Brian Dew says, sounds good. Nice show tonight. Thank you so much, Brian. Appreciate that so much. So, all right, we're signing off here. I'm going to play us out with the song from the one and only What Up America, aka Ian Olson, aka Plasmon. Check out his work on SoundCloud, please. It's great stuff. All right, let's roll out with that. As soon as I find it, just give me, I have literally 100 tabs open right now. This is absurd. What am I doing? Somebody should yell at me for this very loudly. All right, let's do this. Tammy gave me a glare.
No.
All right. Thanks for everything, y'all. Catch y'all later. Peace.
People you talking about, they spent money on white women. They set up bars and they went playing pool and golf for $1,000 a hole, and they were known to make millions and millions when there wasn't no high taxes, and they were not hindered by white America. They were allowed to see the white America is complete and close all the doors on me. I'm not allowed to work in America, out of America. I was stopped right in my prime just when I started making that. So you can't compare me with nobody like Joe Lewis or nobody.
If you are black, if you are brown, if you are indigenous, and if you are poor, this system is rigged and it is right to the core, and we gonna unbreak it. That's it. And that's all.
kind of socialism that revolutionizes the workplace, brings democracy to the workplace for the first time.
So that's one way. And then the other thing is, in my more optimistic days, he's such a perfect endpoint of everything that is toxic and dysfunctional about the United States, about capitalism, about the 80s, that maybe this is the final sort of disgusting burst before we evolve or change it to something better.
Talk about some things about why we need a new party. So I thought that'd be a good way to kind of do this. Why do we need a new party? We need a new party because both parties suck.
What are they talking about? Fortified. Are you fortified for the long run? Do you have your cemetery clothes on? Are you coffin ready to live and die for something bigger than you, like a fundamental transformation of a capitalist civilization?